this is the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, and it's actually got a really nice camera system. Without changing anything, I'm already pretty satisfied with the quick snaps I'm getting from here, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. But even with all the positives, I do have some nitpicks about the photos I'm getting from this phone. So in this video, I'm going to go over what this phone's cameras are really good at, what improvements they need, and some really easy ways to solve those things as much as possible to get some better pictures. We're not going to be using the Pro mode or shooting in RAW. Everything is just going to be shot on auto in JPEG with some really simple settings and some easy editing tips using the free Lightroom app. Before getting started, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. Your one click really does support me a lot, so thanks a ton to you guys that have already subscribed. So let's first go over the pros and cons of the S25 Ultra's camera system. The S25 Ultra takes some really sharp photos. With both the main and the 5x periscope telephoto lens, you get a ton of detail with little to no artificial sharpening. With basically no noise in daylight shots, these are some of the cleanest photos I've taken with the phone. Even though the camera system doesn't have a big 1-inch sensor or something fancy in hardware like on Oppo or Xiaomi phones, the depth of field is respectably shallow here and gives a hint of that professional camera look. Capturing details and overall image quality, Samsung's post-processing is top-notch, especially when we're talking digital zoom or digital cropping. Using 1.5x to 2.5x with the primary sensor is digital cropping, but the images still look excellent. It is a digital zoom, so there is a bit more sharpening, but nowhere do these shots look over sharpened. I really think Samsung has some of the cleanest digital zoom shots in the market right now. But what kind of stands out as not much of a strength is the ultra-wide and the 3x telephoto lenses. Like a lot of other flagship phones, the ultra-wide is pretty standard and nothing to brag about. For the 3x telephoto, even though the 3x shots are lossless optical zoom shots and they are relatively nice looking, this lens seems to fall behind the main and the 5x telephoto. It is the smallest sensor of the three and you do get slightly fuzzier details with less depth of field, so photos seem a bit flatter. Also, the general post-processing misses in some areas. I find a lot of the photos on all the lenses to up the highlights a tad too much, making bright spots a little too bright. The contrast is a bit on the low side, so this is another reason why these photos can seem a bit dull or flat. Samsung has the infamous reputation of oversaturating photos, but that honestly hasn't been true in the last 2 years. The vibrance and saturation are actually slightly lacking in these photos in my opinion, and the colors can look a bit too much on the cool side. So with all these things in mind, let's go over the ways you can improve your photos in some really simple, easy ways. First, make sure to install Camera Assistant from the Galaxy Store. This gives you more customization into your camera settings. Honestly, the only reason I use this is to add the 2x zoom shortcut since I use the 2x zoom range really often. Also, you can control the picture softening here. I personally think the sharpening is just fine on this phone, but if you still feel your photos are being sharpened a little too much, I recommend keeping this to medium. Okay, now let's head on over to the main camera settings for intelligent optimization. Since I generally do take my time for each shot and I do like Samsung's post-processing, I do keep this to maximum. But if you want faster shutter speeds, maybe for capturing a busy street or for taking pictures of your kids running around, lowering this to medium or even minimum is a good option. I also recommend turning on the composition guide with both grid lines and level. It's just so much easier to frame and line up your shots with this. And lastly, for settings to keep, make sure to turn this on for filters and portrait zoom. This will make sure the filter you set and the last zoom level you use stay as the default camera profiles every time you open the camera app. Speaking of filters, One UI 7 revamped the whole filters experience and it actually has improved a ton. You get a lot more tuning and control, and selecting a picture to create a new filter actually does work this time around. Instead of recommending a filter from the store, this time we're going to get inspo from another creator to create a new filter. I used this really nice photo by Robert McComb on Instagram with nice warm and contrasty vibes. I included a link to his Instagram post in the description box, so feel free to go over there and use this picture as reference too. It turned out to be a relatively subtle filter, so I keep the strength at 100%. I like the warmth, but it's a little too much, so I do put it down about halfway where it adds some good warmth to the photo. Like I said, the Samsung's default mode isn't that contrasty and a bit dull in color, so let's increase both the contrast and the saturation a bit, but not too much. I really like that filters now lets you add in some film grain by default to make things look more photographic. I do think it comes on a little strong, so I recommend only slightly putting this up. So yeah, that's the filter that I think mostly resolves some of the weaknesses of the photos here. I do think the photos look a lot more realistic while being pleasing to the eye. There's definitely less editing needed afterwards, which makes this really convenient. Again, since we have these settings to keep on for these filters, this filter and all the adjusted levels will be applied every time you open the camera app, which makes this a lot more convenient. Also, if you have any old photos that you want to apply to this filter too, you can. Just go into the editing options of the photo and change the filter. It'll work exactly the same way. But if you'd rather not use filters and do the editing yourself to get even cleaner images, here's some good editing tips on Lightroom for a quick and easy preset. By the way, I'm using the totally free version of Lightroom here for photos taking on the totally default auto camera mode without any filters added. So yeah, of course, select the photo you want to adjust. To resolve the default shortcomings of the photos, we want to start with the lighting. We want to slightly up the contrast and significantly decrease decrease the highlights. Samsung really ups the highlights too much by default. To help this, I also decrease the white level too. Doing these adjustments already fixes the major issues with the post-processing, so that's great. But to make them look a little nicer on the eyes, I do like to make them slightly warmer since the default colors lean a little too cool. And even though I am satisfied with Samsung's sharpening levels this time around, I do put down the clarity as I generally prefer softer details since they do make for slightly cleaner looking photos. And just to give it more of a photographic look, I add some grain in there as well at around +20. So there you have it, those are all the changes I make to my S25 Ultra photos, and these consistently make each and every photo better for me. If you like how these look, feel free to save it as a preset on your Lightroom app. So with all these adjustments, maybe you're still not satisfied with their photos, so maybe it's just the framing you gotta play with. As a general rule of thumb, I almost never ever use the main lens at 1x because I just think phone cameras in general are just a bit too wide at 1x, making a bit of a fishbowl effect. So I take most photos at least 1.2x, more often at 1.5 to 2x zoom, at 5x optical, and sometimes at 3x optical. These are just more interesting shots to me because it looks closer to how I remember things or perceive as stills from my life. I also use the grid lines for as much perfect symmetry as possible or for playing with the intersection and placements of the objects or subjects within the frame. For some reason, things just look a little more interesting when they're lined up using these grid lines. And especially in harsh lighting environments or even in daylight where there are overly bright light sources, I do recommend putting the exposure down. Your shots will look a lot more usable by doing this. So that's basically all the little adjustments, edits, and shooting methods I consider when taking photos with the Galaxy S25 Ultra. Like I said, these are super simple tips and tricks that anyone can do, so I hope this video was helpful to a lot of you. If it was, let me know down in the comments and feel free to share your own camera tips and tricks that might be good to add on to this video. Again, I really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys on the next video.